I'd like to welcome everybody here today for this presentation titled One Kansas Family Stitched Together with Memories, presented by Terry Hubbard Stahl, and she will have some ancestral roots from around here. This is the book that she has published, and she will talk about that. But in introducing her, I'd like to read that first paragraph. Because I've met her mom, so I think this fits. Terry Stahl is a native Kansan, as much a part of the state as sunflowers. She is also Thelma and Joe Hubbard's oldest daughter. From her parents, she learned the importance of family and hard work, and her mother taught her to sew. From Thelma, she inherited intuition, compassion, and the gift of gab, which makes her a natural storyteller. And I think your mom had the gift of gab too, didn't she?
Yes,
she did. Terry's intellect and sense of duty are gifts from her father. As a passionate historian and keeper of old family quilts, it seemed fitting to wrap the Hubbard family stories around a quilting theme. And I think she'll certainly talk about her book, and I think some are available. And some of you that are quilters might find that a neat way to wrap your family history together. So, welcome Terry, and I'll turn it over to you.
And thank you, everybody. It's nice to speak to small groups because you know you're communicating. You can make eye contact. I live in Topeka, and for 30-some years I taught school. Mostly I taught middle school or junior high or even high school, and I was a social studies teacher. I'm absolutely passionate about history. History in all of its forms. Like, I'd love to go out and examine your log cabin and so on and so forth. Because of that interest, I wanted to know way more than just who are my ancestors. Where did they live? When did they marry? When did they die? I wanted to know the stories. And I know that good history always incorporates all that other information to make sense of all those facts. And that was my intention. So I wrote a book. I didn't start out to write a book. I just started out to write down some stories. And as the years passed, I thought I should just pull all that together. And at any rate, that's what happened. So here's Mom and Dad. And I love this picture of them because they look vital, and, you know, I love that picture of them. I had some goals for writing my book. First goal was to honor them because they were wonderful parents. They have 5 children, and they were very involved in their communities. And I wanted, because I was a teacher, to make my book interesting and inviting, because I knew that the future generations wouldn't pay it much attention if it wasn't. And I wanted lots of historical context, because people behave as they do often because of what they are living through and what's going on around them. I wanted images. I'm a photographer at heart. I love to shoot pictures. I found pictures. I used images. And I wanted to create it and write it in such a way that modern people don't read long, lengthy things. They read snippets. We have short attention span. So I wanted to break it down into topics. And I wanted to interpret what I found, not just say they did this and then they did that and then they did something else. I wanted to show the themes and the repeating patterns and all the other things that interpret history. And so those are my goals. I forgot, I was going to tell you how I'm related to this county. So first off, my mother's maiden name was Wegman, and her mother, Minnie, was a Rogenkamp. So Otto Rogenkamp, who were their next door neighbors, was Mom's uncle, and that makes Leona Burgess my mother's first cousin. And so there is some family here in Pottawatomie County. So Mom grew up on the north side of the county, 1 mile south of the parallel, and my parents in their midlife moved to a place by St. George in the south side of the county, and when I was in high school, and we were very involved in Pottawatomie County 4-H. And so that's another close connection to this county. And Mom and Dad were very involved in the Blackjack American Legion Post. So there's lots of ways that you might have interacted with them. But it does show that my memories are grounded here, and that there were close attachments over the years. At this time, I have 2 brothers who still live in Pottawatomie County. My youngest brother, Alan, lives at Olsburg, and my older brother, Wayne, lives near Flush. So, and they've lived here throughout their lives. I want you to know that Pottawatomie County went to school with me. I taught Kansas history for a lot of years to 8th graders, and I brought from Uncle John's house a red quartzite boulder, and I had it in my classroom. And so we, as part of Kansas history, we would learn about the regions of Kansas, and this is the glaciated region, and those boulders came down with the glaciers. And I would talk it up like it was like this precious family artifact, and I'd tell kids, oh, I have got something to share with you. It's from my ancestral homeland. And then I would produce my red quartzite boulder. And, but I bet they remembered it because I made so much fun of it. And now it's in my garden. So I have lots of precious memories about being at my grandparents' house on the farm. And when I was a child, they went to the Catholic Church in Lillis. And and then later, when I was in high school, and we were in 4-H in this county, and Grandma lived here in town, then staying at Grandma's house and walking back and forth to the fairgrounds. And but my most lasting memory has to do, I don't want to show you this, with the middle finger all by itself thing, but this finger, I caught it in a car door during the fair. And so it's a little damaged. And so every day, I can look at that and say, oh, kids are kids. They do stupid things, So anyhow, so that's a little bit about me and how I fit in with you all and this place. So there's so much I could share with you, but I can't because this could be like a multi-day workshop. So we're just going to move it along. My theme has to do, and it's on the cover here, this quote we made for Mom and Dad's 40th wedding anniversary in 1985. And we were not quilters at the time. So at the time we all knew how to sew. We figured if we could sew, we could quilt. And we started in Memorial Day, and we had this thing done, except it wasn't quilted by Labor Day. And it was wonderful. So this is the quilt we made for them. And the page that adjoins it tells who made what block and the name of the block and where they lived. And then throughout my book, I highlighted these. I tried to use that stitching theme throughout the book because it fits. And so throughout the book, you see the needle and thread. Here's another example of a quilt. Happens to be the one I made most recently for my publisher. But it fits my theme. I use a sunflower as sort of like a representation of me. And this is the dedication page. But once again, I'm using a theme. Now I'm going to start giving recommendations. If you write anything, it doesn't matter if it's 20 pages long, you need to start it somehow with what is it, who created it, and when, and describe it. So it could be a paragraph. In this case, it's a lengthy work, so I have a table of contents. But modern people are busy. If they don't know what you got, like the Topeka Genealogical Society has a library, which is excellent, and they have a lot of family histories. And you could pick them up and you go and you can't figure out within 3 minutes what it is, who wrote it, where did they live, then you're not going to give it much of your time and attention. So make sure that you do that. It could be on the cover, it could be somewhere, you need to explain that. And in this case, if somebody was looking topically, maybe they want to know about World War II, or maybe they're interested in Topeka or missile bases. They're going to get a really good idea of what's in that book from reviewing the table of contents. This is something I'm very proud of. I'm a photographer, right? And I had a lot of little stuff. And my sister Linda, if you've ever met her, she is a saint. But anyhow, Linda kept saying, oh, Terry, you need this. Oh, you should have this. This should be with that other stuff. And at any rate, and so I had quite a few items that came down through the family, and I don't know what to do with them. they're not very valuable, but they're interesting. So one day it just sort of popped into my head, I should do these photo collages. So I laid out some black velveteen on the table and I started arranging things and shooting pictures. And I go, oh, that's very interesting, you know? So then I go, well, I probably need to explain what is this stuff. And that's when this page developed, and I call it Trinkets and Treasures. And some of these I shot multiple times. Mostly I just used my iPhone, so I wasn't using really expensive equipment. But I have 6 of these in my book, and they sort of are for the section dividers. And this happens to be the first one. And the item on that I most treasure is number 4. It's the little bitty oil can that I found in Grandma's sewing machine. And I'm sure that was an important thing. You need to oil your machine. And it's just so tiny, it's only like this big. Oh, I thought that was interesting. So you don't have to do this, but I think that idea alone is wonderful, and it's not complicated. So find those trinkets and treasures. The lodge pins, the holy cards, the this, the that, you know. Lay them out together in some logical fashion, take pictures of them, make an index so that other people know. And then in the future, if they all don't make it another generation or they're dispersed or whatever, people can look back and understand more about it. This is the War and Romance one. Most of these are my dad's, but I actually have Mom's wedding shoes, which are number 8. But those are the artifacts. This one is from after the war, so this would be my childhood. And there were a lot of things that we could have used for the 1950s, but I bet y'all remember like the big earrings, and there are some cards here. Dad belonged to the Oddfellows and the Grange. We were a scouting family. I mean, just stuff. Okay. Now I'm going to talk briefly about photos and other images. If you are blessed and you have a lot of them, I did not. I mean, I have a reasonable amount, but not a lot. You need to curate your collection. You could just create an album of pictures, which is fine. But you have to really study those pictures, because is it worth your time to take this very out of focus, poor quality image and use it when other people will just blow it off because they don't know what it is, they can't see it, it's not good. So these are the things to consider when picking your pictures. First off, is it clear? Can you really see what it's, maybe it was clear at one point, no longer is. I would eliminate it if it's not very clear. Is it captivating? Because in my book, it would have been a really long book if I just put every picture. So I tried to choose the ones that tell the best stories. The ones that say, oh, wonder what they're doing. Or that's so cute. Curate means like, how many baby pictures do you need? I mean, most babies look a lot alike, you know? Or how many scenery pictures or wedding pictures are, you just have to decide what's reasonable and what can you afford to print and publish, and choose carefully. Crop them down. A lot of times pictures have a whole lot of wasted space around them, but don't crop them, don't distort them. Oh, I just hate that. Did you know that when you work with photographs and you pull from the corner with a little arrow, that they proportionally enlarge or shrink? That's all good. That's what you should be doing. But if you pull just from the bottom, you make people tall and skinny, which could be good, but this is not about vanity. Or if you pull from the side only, you make them broader. So be really careful. And if you don't know all this, there's so much good stuff online to teach you how to crop pictures or how to work with family photographs, stuff like that, that you can educate yourself about how to do it without ruining pictures. So I want to share these 3. I just love them. The first one is Mom and her sister in Grandpa's overalls in 1942. And sadly, Grandpa's a little overweight. I was going to read you a little bit about that because I just think it's funny. Let me see what I can tell you about that. So And then the next thing is to caption your pictures. So your caption doesn't need to be the same words as what you're telling in your manuscript. It could be additional information, or it could be slightly said in a different way. Probably the pictures are what's going to pull people into reading the manuscript, so be sure that you do caption them. I was going to read that. I thought I was so clever, but now I'm not. I thought I had it marked. So. Oh, I'm almost there. I was on 26. Okay, so this tells about Grandpa, and I wrote, Thelma's dad, John Wegman, was a farmer and a stockman who was kind-hearted and outgoing. He had a serious weakness for food, and he enjoyed too much of it. As a result, John had a Humpty Dumpty figure. According to his 1942 World War II draft registration card, he was 5'6" and weighed 260 pounds. Like most farmers, he wore bib overalls and had a suit for dress up. Thelma said her father was a proper gentleman. This is a big deal for my mom, and kept the side buttons on his overalls fastened. John loved horses and was known for training and trading teams. When breaking a team, and I tell you about that, and then I'm going to skip. And it goes, John Wegman had a special skill that would have made a Hollywood cowboy jealous. He was an expert with a bullwhip. It was not used to whip animals, but to direct them. The pop of the whip caught their attention and the admiration of his son, who never quite got the knack of it. While mounted on a well-broke horse, John could crack a bullwhip without snapping himself, the horse, or the cattle he was working. And I think the bullwhip story is a good one. And since I published, my brother told me another one that was really good about that. In 1954, they brought their team down to Topeka to pull wagons for the Topeka Centennial. And there were some dogs harassing the teams. And some guy comes up to their wagon and says to Grandpa, there's some dogs up ahead that might give you some trouble, or that might bother your horses. And he said, not my team, they won't. And he just got that whip out. Dogs left. And my brother would have been 7 or 8, but he remembers that, not my team. Anyhow, the second picture I just love there is Mom and Dad, and I'm the little girl. It's obviously Easter. But the incredible thing about this was that I figured out what was Easter that year, and Mom had my sister Linda 12 days later. And back then you didn't say you were pregnant, you were in a family way, you mostly didn't say anything. And I think, and Mom did not have difficult pregnancies, and she apparently did not gain a lot of weight either, because you can't tell that hidden behind that little boy's head is a baby bump, and that she was soon about to have her fourth child. So, and then this one is lovely, and I never saw it in Dad's lifetime. I would have loved to have talked to him about this. But when he went into the military, they had kind of an abbreviated boot camp, and apparently they're having some kind of boxing thing. But it appears they're wearing their underwear. And I think it's significant because Dad's on the left, and notice he has muscles. He's a farm kid, you know that. I mean, even though he was an older farm kid, I mean, he was used to using his muscles. And he also has a little bit of a farmer's hand, too. So that's my dad in his tidy whities there when he's in the military. Here's another feature I like to share with you. I've highlighted in yellow some things, but I made these timelines because there's just way more history than you could squeeze into a book. And so I picked out the events in the world, and the world could be your neighborhood, but the world could be your community, your state, your nation, or your world. And then on the other side, I put corresponding family events. So there's more history there than is in the narratives anywhere. And I highlighted some. So the one on the left, I find this fascinating. 1910. Women's skirts rise to the ankles. Okay, this is in Grandma Minnie's age. That's a big deal because once your skirts get up to the ankles, you don't have to lift your skirts to go up steps. You don't have to drag them through the mud. You know, this is a big deal, 1910. So what do you think happens 15 years later? 1925. How short are they? Well, they're not mini skirts, but we call these women flappers, and their skirts were knee length. I think sort of the bottom of the knee, but nonetheless, that's quite a lot of change in 15 years. Another one that I was going to point out just for y'all, is if you look at 1930, it says one American farmer feeds 9.8 people. So this is 1930. Fast forward to this page 20 years later, one American farmer will be feeding 27 people, which is 3 times. And that is mostly due to mechanization, so introduction of tractors and other equipment, fertilization, so they're making fertilizer. It's petroleum based, but it's fertilizer, and they're using hybrid seed. So in only 20 years, they've tripled their productivity for human consumption. And if you go down 10 more years, it's jumped up to 46 people. So that's why there aren't very many farms, because of the mechanization and so forth, that we have fewer farmers because they farm larger farms. But they're also more efficient and feeding 46 people. So I highly recommend the timelines. They're not hard to make. I did this with Excel spreadsheet. So I just made 3 columns. I put the numbers down the middle, and then I put the facts on either side. And then on the right-hand side, I put family events. So I thought this was significant. 1933, a cyclone hit this community up north, and it damaged, made quite a swath across the county. And my grandparents' farm was included. But it's just interesting, what can you write in there? How much do you put in there? You can get a lot more in those timelines than I can tell you in my story. So, highly recommend those. Even if your ambition is not to publish like this, you can still make timelines to help you organize your facts. Okay, going back one. A favorite of mine, definitely this county. So I found this series of pictures. They were taken in 1942, and Mom is there on the dump rig. And my mom was a storyteller, and she loved working the hayfield. And she was very proud of the fact that she could operate that dump rake very, very well. So she could make straight windrows. And it had to do with something like you had to stomp on something and pull something. And anyway, there you go. Mom is on the dump rake. Okay, well, so when I found these, I knew what they were about, but I couldn't tell about them. I wasn't educated to do that. So I found 2 people to help me, and I'm a docent at the Kansas State Historical Museum in Topeka, and there was a guy working there named David as a volunteer, and David had to be at least 15 years older than I was, and very nice guy. And I asked him, could he help me? Oh, he was thrilled. And he explained to me every little step and what's going on and so forth. And then my Uncle John also was able to help me with this. And so between these experts, and that's part of the fun of doing family history, is finding people and hearing their stories and them helping you and you helping them. So I'll tell you very quickly. So Mom's driving the dump rig. Up at the top, I give you some basic facts. On a good day, a crew of 4 with 3 teams could put up 10 to 12 acres. Okay? And so this is Mom. Her dad is in the second picture, and he's the sweep man, and this is the most highly skilled of the jobs in the hayfield. And he is pulling a sweep, which literally is raking up the hay that has been placed into the windrows. And those 2 horses are not attached to each other. So if you do not have a highly skilled horseman and a very well-trained team, bad things can happen. I don't know the particulars, but at any rate, so he is gathering the hay. Then he brings it to this is the stack. He brings it here, and this apparatus has like these teeth. And he has to transfer his hay from the sweep onto this, okay? And that takes a little special skill too, because you bring it forward and you jiggle it and you do this, then you back up and I don't know. But anyway, you get the hay on there. And then, this is the cutest part. This is my Uncle John. He is 5 years old. 5 years old, and he's working in the hayfield. And we are certain that he thinks he is running that team. He's probably not. But the real story probably is, this is his Uncle Otto up on the top. This was his team, says my Uncle John. And probably he's using voice commands.
He is.
And so when he clucks or whatever his command is, those horses move forward, that sweep comes, whoop, and it throws the hay onto the top of the stack. And then the people on the top, usually one or two guys, have to arrange the hay and position it to make a good, sturdy, stout, well-packed haystack. Okay? And this picture was taken the same day. This is John's brother who's come to visit from Jefferson City, Missouri. He's a city slicker. He works in a grocery store, I think. At any rate, and this is my Uncle John's horse. And so ever since he was a little tyke, he would take his horse to the field and help. And when he was done helping, then he'd get sent back to the house on his horse. so anyhow, but I just love this page because I learned a lot. It tells a story. I didn't know I even had those pictures. I'm so glad that I could tell you this story. So,
I remember seeing one of those sweeps and the storm destroyed ours.
really. Well, and I had a friend who I met at an exercise class who was at least 15 years older than I was. And at any rate, she ended up in a nursing home and I would go visit her. And I brought my project and she told me all about the sweep too and working in the hayfield. So one of the things that your work will do is connect you to people you didn't expect to be connected to, like the David guy at the museum and my friend who at that time was in the nursing home. I had all Mom's report cards. And so I started to compare them, and so I put them in time order, and I was able to draw some conclusions. So I'm not going to read you these, but I just think they're fascinating. You know, their school burned down, I think it was 1933, at the top of the hill. Anyway, there was a lightning strike and it burned to the ground. But the good news is they had insurance on the school, and they were able to rebuild it and start the fall. So, interesting. But my mom had a learning disability, and she couldn't spell anything. And we, as a family, just cackled to find out she won spelling awards in first grade or something. It was almost beyond our imagination. It was like, oh, that's funny. Anyhow. Oh, and yes, that was Mom's slate. So, now very briefly, and this could take a half a day, but use primary source documents whenever you can. And that means ones that were created at the time by the people involved, if you can, because they're going to be the most accurate and complete, and that can be a photograph, like the pictures from the hayfield. It can be those report cards, newspaper clippings, journals, letters, court documents. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And so I brought with me, and this is like huge. I had in my basement, because of my sister Linda, all these documents, and they were in boxes, disarrayed, and I just started going through them, and I just found stuff I had no idea I had. Everything from discharge papers, diplomas, certifications, letters. It just goes on and on. But when you read these, like this is a really important one. It's an income tax statement for 1945. But you can learn a lot about your family from an income tax record. I have U.S. individual income tax returns for 46. How those got saved, I do not know. But the list, this is a pretty vast thing. Okay? And when you find them, try to organize them somewhere or other. If they're in plastic, it probably means that I think they're special and I don't want to hurt them or break them or damage them. If they're not, it might have been something that I was able to print off the internet or something that I could get more copies of. But this is a huge document. And from here is where I get the facts to tell the story. So that would be a report card. Now for the letters to Karen. When I was in 1961, my dad used to work at the the Air Force Supply Depot in Topeka. And in 1961, they were closing it. And so he switched over to the Army Corps of Engineers working on the missile bases. And that summer we moved to Cheney, Kansas. And I have a friend named Karen, and I wrote her letters. Sometime in the 80s, maybe the early 90s, she gave them back to me. And they didn't have their envelopes, but the letters in a manila envelope. And I opened them up and I started reading a few at random. And all I could see was spelling errors. And so I was embarrassed and I went, oh my God, I could not spell. And I put them up. But I didn't know where I put them. And so when I'm working on the book, I'm thinking, I know there were some letters from Karen, I just don't know where they are. And so months went by. And one day I was in the basement and they almost fell off a shelf. And so they're in here. And once again, well, I had to figure out time order. And whenever there's a post-it, it means that I'm either summarizing or asking a question. But were these ever valuable? Because I tell her things about our new lives and our houses and our schools and stuff. And yeah, I couldn't spell. Oh well. But what a wonderful, wonderful resource. And I was so glad to find this. And I also found, I've always been a kind of organized person, but I used to keep calendars. And remember there used to be some that were about the size of a checkbook and they were given away by Hallmark or somewhere. And I found mine from those years. And oh, how very helpful. Because it had things that we did, or when I started work, or when we moved, or when Deanna came to stay with, I wrote them on those calendars. Very helpful in writing this story.
Do you need to have any special kind of your plastic?
No, you don't. That is the kind you can buy at any office supply, online, Office Max.
Will they say it will last a long time?
Yeah, it's an acid-free, but it's the kind that they all make. And these maybe say better item, blah, 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 but some of them, there's all different manufacturers of this. But if you have some doubts in your mind, this one says Staples. Google it and say,
Page protectors.
archival page protectors. And I think you'll find out they're just the same ones as all the other plastic. This another page.
Archival ones are different material that won't harm the
Right.
pictures and stuff.
Yeah, but these don't harm. Yeah. So this is from my dad's family sale, and Dad lived out between Dover, Kansas, and Eskridge. There used to be a little community called Keene.
Yeah.
There's nothing there now, but it's still a road. But anyhow, they had a sale in 1946, and I think this is so funny. Under chickens, I gotta read you this. Okay, it says they got these white Wyandotte hens and pullets, and then it says in parentheses, these chickens are well bred. Really. They probably just ordered them and, Well, they might have hatched them. I don't think they did. But just the idea that they're bragging about their well-bred chickens, it's hilarious. That's Dad holding a steer or a calf.
Is that a Hereford? There used to be a lot of pride in having.
Oh, very, definitely.
Yes.
Mine
Whether it
was
was
a
a
Hereford
cow.
family. It was a
Yes.
Hereford
It
family.
was a Hereford. Yeah.
Yes, we knew. We had Hereford.
My grandfather traveled the train to New York City and registered Hereford cattle back off of the ship and had it
What year?
in the before the 30s, evidently.
Wow, those would be,
And
those are
Martin
real
Coker out
Herefords.
here, yeah.
Yeah.
He
wow.
still has some of them. That's where.
Well,
his
and I
dad-
know it goes
and
back.
some Wagman bought the bull from,
Oh, what
no,
if-
his dad bought the registered Hereford bull from a wagman, and then the cows from Grandpa Paul Juno.
Well, see,
And
that would have
that's
been
where
my
the
grandpa,
Clippers-
because there weren't any other Wegmans.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's where they got started.
But I think it even goes back another generation. I think Grandma Rodenkamp's father's name was Will. I think they had Herefords up in Nemaha County.
Yeah.
So I think that breed has been around and appreciated by these people for a long time. My dad was certainly a Hereford man. Yes, he was. So now, use maps if you can, when you can. There are a lot of maps that are not copyrighted that you can download off the internet. And so I just wanted to show where in Kansas we were. And so number 1 is St. Benedict's, where Mom was born. Number 2 is Wheaton. Number 3 is Osawatomie, where my dad was born. And then, for some reason we don't know, Dad's family was in Lincoln, Kansas, way out there, 1925, and so forth. So just give people a sense of distance and proximity. Now I'm just showing off. I love my World War II chapter. In World War II, I already knew a lot about World War II, but when I was researching, I was reading every document that my dad had saved. I could put together part of that story. But I wanted to say it correctly. And there is a definite jargon with military. And having worked at Fort Riley, Dad worked at Fort Riley as a civilian until he retired, that I knew I had to be right. So I called the Kansas National Guard Museum and I asked, was there somebody there? Well, yes, we have a historian. And so I called him, and he was so tickled because somebody loved what he loves. And so, and his specialty is, guess what? World War II. So I went out and visited with him, and he went through my artifacts with me. He read my writing, and we talked, and he looked up stuff. And so I'm pretty sure that I have, shall we say, presented this information correctly, but it tells about Dad's military service. And quite frankly, I learned a family secret. Have any of you learned family secrets in your studies? Okay, well, here's our family secret. When World War II started, they had this huge need for soldiers. And they knew that a lot of people wouldn't be able to pass the physical. So they decided to set up a separate program, and they called them limited service men. And so Dad, like a lot of other young men, so in January 42, he goes to enlist. And they think he has a heart murmur. And they reject him. And he's crestfallen. He didn't know he had a heart murmur. Nobody else told him he had a heart murmur. Well, anyhow, he goes home, and in April, he got drafted. But he was drafted as a limited service man. And what that meant, that they were going to do jobs stateside to free up able-bodied men so they could fight the war. And so, but he never told us that, ever, not once. So he was trained, which was perfectly in keeping with his aptitudes. He was trained as an airplane mechanic on B-24s and B-29s. Okay? But sadly, he was only in the service for 15 months. And you think, well, what happened? Well, the forces that be, this is a war, and men are running it. So it's a fiasco. Some commanding officers don't know what to do with their LS men. Some treat them just like regular soldiers, some don't. It's a mess. That year, they discharged, get this, 55,000 of them. That's a lot of men. And Dad got kicked out of the service because supposedly he had this defective heart, which he never had, and he never told us. So we knew that he came home, and we knew that they told him he had a heart murmur, but we didn't know about the LS thing at all. Anyway, so at time of discharge, he had already risen to the rank of sergeant, and he was highly skilled. Well, luck would have it that the Topeka Air Force Supply Depot, at the time I think it was called the Army Air or something or other depot, was just opening, and he was very well suited to that job because he just finished training as a aircraft mechanic. And so he started work out there almost immediately and worked there until it closed. So here are some other pages. These look a little more scrapbooky. I did a chapter on food and tried to talk about food traditions, what we ate, what food meant to our family. And then on the right, that's the oldest family food tradition we have. Started in 1960. Mom brought home from the IGA store a little bunny rabbit, and then we copied them ever after. And over the years, they morphed a little. Some kids were a little more creative than others. But we've been doing it every year since 1960. And now a lot of the nieces and the nephews have been doing this with their kids. And you get 2 rabbits out of 1 cake mix. So the tradition has always been you keep one and you give one away. And so here are some different ones. These happen to be my 3 grandchildren. He lives in, I think he lived in Philadelphia when that picture was taken. She lives in Kansas City, but we're still making all the bunny rabbits. They're very special to our family. This comes from the chapter's late mom and dad's life. But once Dad retired, he really got involved with the American Legion. And his back is to us. But he was on the committee. I think there were quite a few other people involved because I think each of the legions in the county worked together to make the memorial that's on the courthouse grounds in Westmoreland. And the guy there pointing, that's my brother Wayne, pointing at his own name. The reason, I asked him, I said, how do they know what names to put on there? So when you were discharged from the military back in the day, you were advised to take your discharge papers to the county clerk and have it included in the record. So they would transcribe it and put it in the record. And so they used all of those names, unless they got other names that somebody submitted. But those are the names that they knew for sure were from this county. And there's Mom. She didn't do so much with the poppies, but she baked pies. That the Legion had different activities, especially bingo on Tuesday, and Mom made pies every Tuesday for the Legion bingo. And she had faithful customers. It was a big deal. Now I'm telling you still yet a different story. This was our first house in Topeka, and my dad was very resourceful. All of his generation, I think, saved everything. But Dad tore down that little building about the size of a 1-room schoolhouse that was at Keene, Kansas. It was the beach that was the Sons Camp. So, Sons of Civil War veterans built that building in Keene. And it was sold at auction. Dad bought it, tore it down, trucked the wood to Topeka. And Dad worked with a contractor to build this house. So he didn't do it all by himself because he was working full time.
So would you say he disassembled the house?
Yeah, he tore it down.
Rather than tearing it down. That, I mean, he took it down with intent, he kept that lumber and
Reused it, repurposed it. Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
And this is the house. And here you can tell the garage was added in 1952. This was built 49, so 3 years later. And it's also built of repurposed lumber. And I don't know if it's the same lumber or if he found some more lumber somewhere. But before I was going to have my book launch, I found the people who own the house. And they came and they were so delighted to hear the story of their house. And I have such good documentations. So I even have like receipts that tell you how much he paid for this and that to build the house. And it's just really exciting. So every one of my chapters, I drew some kind of a conclusion. And I didn't do that at the beginning, but I know that people are lazy. And sometimes people just, like you were a student once, you know you did it too. You just jump to the summary and you move on. So I tried to kind of pull it together. And once again, I used the theme. And I actually took a piece of muslin, raveled it out, washed it a bunch of times, pressed it but not too well, stitched around the edge to create the block. I'm going to read you one of them. So this would be what I wrote about the end of World War II. Almost there. Although Joe Hubbard's service in the Army Air Corps during the Second World War was brief and did not end as he liked, it played a crucial role in stretching and strengthening the core fibers of his character. He adapted well to military discipline and learned to work within the chain of command. Joe's military occupation as an aircraft mechanic matched his aptitudes, and his promotion to sergeant shows his technical and leadership abilities were recognized. Joe returned home a more worldly young man with greater self-confidence and marketable skills. And at first I wouldn't have even thought that through, but it's true. I mean, my dad, sometimes bad things turn into good things, you know, and sometimes you're blessed, and I think that was very helpful to him. So this is actually the conclusion, but then I will take questions, so I've been talking 50 minutes. This is their headstone, but I would like to challenge you not to let your lives be summarized, the loved ones that you cherish, be summarized in that. I mean, it's not a bad headstone, that's not the point, but there's so much to their lives that you just can't put on a headstone. And unless you do something to preserve the memory, it will be lost. And I hope that you think of things that you could do to write down some of the stories and to assemble some of the pictures and create a notebook and whatever, so that you, even if you don't write a book, you created a record for your family. So, and now I'm available for questions.
How long did it take you to, you started your idea and then you got published?
That's a good question. Probably 10 years. Because, well, when I started, I didn't know it was going to be a book. I just was going to write this stuff down. And and Dad's health was failing, and I was taking it to the nursing home to ask him questions, you know. But then there were periods in there where I did very little. And then I would pick it up again. So it was a lengthy process. Yeah. But I liked it. So I especially am a morning person, and my husband's health was poorly, and I would get up really early and I would work at it for a while, and it was like it kept me vital. Sometimes it was like a kind of like a detective, you know, like, for example, I go, well, what does that mean? Well, if that means that, then this can't be right. Do you understand what I mean? And just playing with information and learning. And sometimes it was just fun. Like, for example, I'd say, we got a television when I was in kindergarten. Okay, what did a television cost in 1954? And you could find stuff on the internet. I even found the television that we had, and I know it was the right television because I had a picture of it, you know, and it had this V on the front. You see what I mean? And so, for your information, it costs about $400 and some. And by today's standards, that's a couple grand. So, televisions were expensive. So, yeah. Any other questions? You want to know how you get a book published? That was a whole nother trip. This, I don't know, I'm just out of curiosity. What do you think this cost to publish? Anybody?
I mean, for somebody that wants to buy it from you, or?
Well, just in general. When I started this, I thought that, what do you think, what would you be willing to spend if you had written a book like this? And you're thinking, whatever.
10,000.
What?
10,000.
Wow, that's, okay, I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have vanity presses.
Right. So this was published through Amazon, and Amazon has a division called KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, and they're very reasonable. But I didn't know how to lay out my book. So people say to me, did you do all of this? Well, it's all my writing, it's all my photographs, it's all my creativity, but I still had to have somebody in the middle there who knew how to use the kind of word, they're more than word processing programs, but there's a program that all the industry uses to lay out books, magazines, everything. And I needed to find somebody who could lay out my book. So when you say, how much did it really cost? Well, quite a bit, but it was I paid Ann $2,000. We worked together off and on for a couple of years almost. I don't think I even paid her well. But I would send her, and this happens in the middle of, we just started working together right at the beginning of COVID. And I would send her the typed chapter in a Word document. I would send her the pictures as individual photos. She would save all of them, and then we would Zoom, and after we made our initial decisions about how to present, it got easier. But all chapters are going to look like this. All chapters have to end on a right-hand page. All chapters are going to have these it got easier. But at first it was just, well, let's see if we can nudge that down a little bit. Well, maybe if we put that picture on the next page, well, maybe that picture just isn't even good enough to be in there. You know, and that was like anybody who's done scrapbooking, this is kind of like scrapbooking on a computer, with one advantage, you can resize. But sometimes we would decide to crop the picture in, or make it bigger, or make it smaller, because it needed to be about there. And it was very challenging. But I'm so glad I spent that money.
Was she like your editor then?
Yes, she was an editor.
She was your editor. You hired her. How did you find her as an editor?
I found her through my volunteer work at the museum. And I had taken my notebook, and back then, I had many notebooks. I had it divided into chapters with all the pictures and all that, whatever, for that chapter behind a tab. And I was sharing it with another volunteer and saying I was looking for somebody to help me put this into a book. And she says, I know who you need. And she lives at Wakarusa, which is not far.
So when you say Amazon published it, did you really kind of self-publish it?
It is self-published. Well, so if you want it, yeah, kind of. Well, they print it too. So if you want to find my book, all you have to do is to go to the internet and put in either the book's name or my full name, and it's right there. Or you can go directly to Amazon and do that, or you could go to Kindle Direct Publishing, but all of those places will take you directly to the book.
So once your editor set up all your pages, then you submitted it
Okay,
to...
yes. So we worked together for a long time, but we got better. We had our moments. Well, like for example, she's my age, so we're not like, it would have been easier if she'd been, 35 and did this every day. But where we'd have computers crashed and they updated the program and now you couldn't use this font. And I mean, just lots of technical issues. And once I was so worried, I thought, she is gonna call me and say, you know, Terry, I just don't think I want to upgrade my computer. I think I'm gonna retire. And I was gonna weep. But anyhow, she worked with me and we're friends now. We're good friends, but it was a process. Okay, so, but you can take a document, it's just a regular old Word document, and upload it to KDP and get it published. And it won't have to be on the internet unless you let it be. I mean, you can just say, I want 20 copies of this for my family, we're done. And you can do that too. But I didn't know what it was going to cost because they didn't have the estimate the cost button. And it is 209 pages. What's it going to cost? And I thought, if it's under $50, I'll be okay. What do you think it really cost?
For an individual copy, is that what?
Yeah, if you went on Amazon today to buy it, what would it cost you? $22.50. $22.50.
$22.50.
And plus tax and shipping, so it's more than that. But I will sell it to you today for the remarkable low price of only $20. Did you hear that? Okay. I can order author copies and I get them cheaper. So I try to keep some at the house, and that's why I'm toting around extras. Okay?
Would you say you did self-publish?
Yes, it is self-published
So
using.
if you wouldn't have, would you have rather went another way and not self-published, or would you recommend self-publishing to other people that want to do it?
It's doable.
It's doable.
You need to have somebody who's pretty good with computers.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But my friend Cindy has done some, and they don't have lots of pictures and stuff, but essentially they're really nicely done Word documents. And she's inserted the pictures and added footnotes and done everything. And she's printed on Amazon, bound in everything, and shared them with family and whatever.
And then you did that option through Amazon to have them sell your books.
Yeah, you do not have. So if it's cheaper than going to your local print shop to get things done. So it is worth exploring. And Cindy's a smart lady, but she figured it out all by herself. You know what I mean? So, they're going to tell you, no, you can't do that because it's outside the bound or the margins, or it's, you know what I mean? And then you can order, when we first got it online, we ordered examination copies, and we got 5 of them, which was the maximum you could get. And then we shared them, and everybody edited. And then we came back together, and we'd say, page 37, second line, and we pulled together all the, so my sister Linda, me, Anne, her friend, and who was the 5th one? Anyway, we had 5 readers, and to try, but there are still mistakes. There are still things that could have been better. Yeah. So, thank you for other questions? Okay. Well, I could read to you, but my writing improved so much from writing. So I know most people say, but I can't write. Well, no, maybe not too well, but you'll get better. And with all the spell checkers and grammar stuff that's online, it will help you. But just start somewhere, and you'll be glad you did. And it doesn't have to be in time order either. If you want to start by explaining the time your grandma took you to somewhere and you had a great, then start there. Make one story, one completed writing, and then pick something else. One of the, I guess time to stop. But one of the things I did that I think is really important, I speak in 2 voices in my book. So the main body of the book is written in 3rd person. And that means they did, he, she, Thelma, Joe, whatever, did this and that. But wherever you see an up close and personal, and they look different, they have half of a sunflower, they say up close and personal there in italic font. Those are written 1st person. And they are usually something that touched my heart. And I wanted to speak in my voice. So I had to figure that one out, because it was hard to figure that one out. And it made it so much better when I did that.
So your artifacts, have you kept all of your artifacts at your house? Or have you passed them down to your grandkids?
I'm passing them out. Anybody that'll take them. Yeah, you know how that goes. Well, for example, my son is the only one of the grandsons who went in the military. Clearly, he should have the military stuff. You know what I mean? And great grandma Rodenkamp's shawl is in our family line, and it's going to, there were 3 granddaughters who wore it in their wedding. Only one of them really wanted it. Do you know how this goes? So she should have grandma's shawl. That sort of thing. So, yeah, but it's a process. I'm hoping the Kansas State Archives out at the museum will take my paper documents, and I'm hoping that they'll see this stuff as an archive. And because they go together, do you see what I mean? That they'll accept them into their collection. And therefore they would always be available for the world.
That'd be really neat.
If they will. I think they will.
They have like rules.
Yes. Well, the bottom line is they don't have unlimited manpower, they don't have unlimited money, and they don't have an unlimited storage. So they have to be a little selective. But I think because this is a package, it's not just a box of unrelated stuff that they may do that. Okay? So,
Well, let's give Thelma a round of applause. I missed out on most of it because we have a family that grew up around here. Philip Keel is here with his wife. So I was kind of helping them a little bit. But the neat thing is Deanna does tape this, and I can watch it tonight or whenever I want, and you all can watch again to pick up on the details that maybe you want to reinforce as you start your own stories. And I know some of you have verbally told Linda and I lots of stories, and lots of times I'll say, well, have you written this down? Well, no, I haven't got there yet. Hopefully Terry has inspired
or at
me.
least record it. I mean, if you in your heart don't think you're ever going to write it down, record it and make sure it's stored in at least 3 places so that you're not going to lose it. I mean, don't leave it just on a little cassette somewhere and then that gets lost, you know. Make sure you digitize it and you archive it somewhere.
So we want to,
One thing I was gonna add, when you did your pictures and the plastic page protectors, if you take and put a name list on plain paper in with that, people can figure out then who is actually in those pictures.
Yeah.
When I started in, I inherited approximately 2,500, maybe 3,000 pictures from my great aunt, my grandparents, my parents, and a lot of them had no names on, but luckily my great aunt was great into putting a name on them. So we have taken, and now she put them on we have a separate computer with nothing but family history on. It's never been attached to the internet. But she has taken and put names on all of these old ones, and then we have it, of course, backed up on flash drive, etc. But if you put the names on paper with the pictures, it will save your generations down a lot of work.
One of the things I'm trying to do now is whenever I work with a document that is a significant document. Okay, so like last week, I found one of Norm's aunt's pictures, and she raised my husband, and I'd never seen it before. And so I scanned it, I put it on Ancestry, and when I load it into Ancestry, I identify who it is, when they were born, why I think it's this person, where it was taken, everything. And I feel good knowing that it's archived. And if you don't want to fiddle with Ancestry, I would use Family Search, which is the Mormon one. But so that not only do we still maintain the original, at least for my generation, I don't know what'll happen in the future, but that it's not just staying with me, you know. So, but it takes a lot of time to do that. But however you get faster with experience. Yeah.
how many of you are identifying the current pictures that you take?
How many
Just a
people
thought.
actually have pictures that are all on the
Well,
phone?
Yeah,
they're all on phone, and how do you identify pictures that are on
Oh, I can tell you
phones?
that.
Share that with
Okay.
everybody.
Modern pictures that are digital have something called metadata. And as long as there's been digital pictures. And so I went personally digital with a camera in the year Austin was born. He just graduated from high school, so 18 years ago. And what that means is it travels with the image. It will tell you what device it was taken on and the date. And if it had a GPS on the camera, which the early ones probably didn't, it'll tell you the place. And it gives you, so if I were to go into here, I want to show you. I only have 19,000 pictures. I was gonna close this. Okay, so if I go down here at the bottom and I open my photos, and Okay. Oh my God, there's that old lady. Okay. But this is my granddaughter, and she just did this tie-dye T-shirt. We are very proud. It's for the fair. Never mind. Okay. What I was going to show you though. See up here, there's a little eye and a circle. Okay. If you click on that, and it doesn't matter whether it's on your phone. Oh, maybe I can't. I'm not on the internet right now.
No.
Okay, well, you'll have to take my word for it. You click on that, and it shoots up a little box, and it has that. You can title the picture, you can add a note, you can tag your picture. Okay, so you could, starting today or going back over the last few years, you could go back in there and put Johnny's 4th birthday, you know, well, better yet, John Smith's 4th birthday. Do you see what I mean? And it'll also have where it was taken. And so modern pictures will have this data encoded with them. And scan documents, you do the same thing. So when I scan documents, I scan them on my printer, I save them to my computer, same deal. You know, you can name it, you can do all those things. And that's why it takes a long time. Because you're not just going scan, 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 scan. You're going, and if you have 7 people in a picture, you need to put all 7 names, and you know, it's a little bit time consuming. But we should all be doing that. And I wish I could have shown you it. It really isn't that scary. So, okay, thank you. And I'll put this away. But tie-dye, not so hard.
Well, once again, I want to thank Terry for sharing with us. I think it was a very educational program for everybody, and like I say, we can go back and we can watch it again, and probably, do you have a card or
I do.
A contact that if they
I made
need
these.
to ask you a question, they can?
They're just a little but they have stitchedwithmemories@gmail.com. So that's my designated email address that goes with my book. So, and you can have those.
While she's handing those out, I think she brought some books and has talked to you about how to purchase those. We do have, if you don't have the history of Onega Ann, we have those for sale here at the museum. Coming of age, 1930s. This is more on one family. It happens to be Albert Brunkel family, but it's a neat story of the 20s and how the family was ran in the 20s and how they went to church in the 20s.
That would have been a really good resource for me to use, telling my family story, but they may be Lutheran or they may have been 20 miles away, but I bet there were a lot of commonality there.
You know what? She did not charge us to come today, so would it be appropriate for us to give her one of these as a thank you for coming? There you go.
I feel like a beggar. Yeah.
And then we have the Old Settlers Tales that some of you might be interested in. Those are available for sale here. If you have not signed in, please do so. And we do appreciate donations for the program today. There are cookies, compliments of Karen Matson, and bottles of water there on the side of the desk. I apologize for it being kind of scrambled in here, but we have to bring stuff in somewhere before we can process it. The entire museum is open if you've never been through the museum, including the log cabin, the caboose, and the schoolhouse, and the privy. I recommend you use this one, not that one. There is a corn cob down there, though. And I think that's... well, we don't have a catalog down there. We need to get one down there. A good old Sears and Roebuck.
No, my grandparents really did. They had this.
Well, we did, yeah.
I've got the hanger that was in this one for the catalog pages.
The privy came from the Colderman farm. That's where it came from. So you're certainly free to visit some more with Terry. Free to get your refreshments. It's really nice outside if you would prefer to go outside and get a little more air to visit. you're welcome to do that. I thank you for coming today and taking
You're very
advantage of
welcome.
this.
Thank you for liking my work. I mean, it just like warms my heart.
Like
Let me get a picture of the
We
whole-
brought one.
Yes.